This is a continuation of descriptions of Bill's behaviors towards me. Bill constantly embarrassed many of his potential court witnesses and made me afraid of going to the bathroom because he'd scream at Mom and me every time I had to urinate and my mom brought me to the bathroom. He'd scream that Mom's bringing me to the bathroom constituted visitation interference and refusal of visitation. When Bill was out of earshot, one of Bill's potential witnesses whispered to my mom that it was shocking how abusive Bill behaved towards me. Bill would often read books or sleep at my grandparents' house when he was meant to be visiting with me. So, now that I'm an adult, has Bill changed? No, it seems that he hasn't. During a deposition for court, since I tried to sue him for his abuses, various abuses towards me, he acted like an infant during the whole thing. The attorneys observed this and also felt he was very juvenile in his behavior. He constantly had his phone ringing during the deposition. He did not respect that other people were talking. He did really strange things. Offered me his phone to try to, I don't know, irritate me, I guess. I have no idea what his problem was. Hovering over me. And he also, the other thing that was interesting is he claimed to have his truck in the outside in the parking lot, but he also had a gold sports car or something that the attorneys saw. And they said, oh wow, Bill has such a nice car, we wish we could afford one like that. So this guy is not poor. Otherwise, why is he driving around in these golden cars and stuff? Talk about crazy. But I think that maybe his new wife Lynn was in one of them, because I can't see how he could drive two vehicles to the deposition by himself. Unless he had someone else coming with him. So that already is pretty weird. I guess she's frying her butt off outside in the parking lot like she used to freeze her butt down at the bottom of our driveway. I don't know why he treats her this way. I would find it very disrespectful if I were her, but that's her problem. Anyhow, my point with this gold car business is that the place that I was staying at, mysteriously, sometime later, had a gold car drive by there all day long and beep at the house every time it drove by the house I was staying in. I can only imagine that this was stalking and intimidation and it was meant to frighten me. I thought it was so stupid I just went back into the room and read a book. So, who cares? But I just wanted to point out that Bill had a gold car. It was the exact make and model, and I did see it and hear it constantly beeping. The only reason I think this person left is they assumed finally, I believe Bill, assumed that I wasn't there because there was no car in the driveway. Generally when there was no car in the driveway, I wouldn't be there. So, he normally would have been correct, but he persisted for a long time, many, many hours, beeping and driving back and forth by this house. Very juvenile behavior, and could have been very frightening for me since, from my perspective, it was like being stalked in a foreign country since I hadn't been in America for at least 10 years, I believe it was. So just try to imagine someone with Asperger's syndrome going to a totally new country, already being socially retarded, not knowing anything, not knowing any emergency numbers to call, nothing at all, and being all alone in this house and having someone stalk you. Really disconcerting. So that was that. The lawyers felt that he acted like a baby at the deposition. At the deposition, I wanted to note that I said, well, you know, it would be nice if I did have some help financially to go to school, that I have problems financially. And I said that Bill could give me a check right then and there, and they said, well, he doesn't have his checkbook. So I said, well, he knows the address I'm staying at, but he never came by to drop off any money or help me. He could have, and he didn't. So I'd like to point that out as a start. It doesn't seem like he really cared about me financially. I was criticized for not taking the SAT when I was in the States, but I was only supposed to be there for 2 weeks. My plane flight ticket was changed, so I ended up being there a lot longer. But I was criticized at the deposition. It was insinuated that I wasn't trying to further my education because of the SAT business and not just going down to a local university to sign up for it. I don't know anyone who would sign up at a strange university, unknown to you, and in 2 weeks manage to take the SAT with the time transition and exhaustion as well. So, yeah, that would have been problematic too. The other thing that Bill did was he and his lawyer kept focusing on the word visitation with regards to the sexual abuse, saying that it was supervised, when actually it wasn't really. There were only people upstairs at my grandparents' house, but there was nobody downstairs, so we were alone downstairs when the abuse took place. And he kept focusing on the fact that there were windows downstairs, so how could abuse take place without anyone noticing? Well, anyone who's been down in a basement and sees basement windows will note that the windows are so low that, at least in our case, with our basement, you have to get down on your stomach on the ground outside in order to see through the windows. And there were bushes in front of the windows, so it wasn't like everybody could just look in and gaze whenever they wanted. So he was isolated and he knew it. So that was something. He claimed that he had insurance that he got for me, and he claimed it was from his goodwill. And that's not true, and I said at the deposition I don't believe that he did it out of goodwill of his heart, and I confirmed it later. He was ordered by a judge after we left America to get me insurance because he never wanted to get me insurance before, so now suddenly to get child support he needed to get me insurance. So that was a condition for getting my mom to pay him a fortune in child support. So, yeah, that all these things do not make me believe that he loves me, and it doesn't make me believe that he's changed. As to his character, many people have attested to that. I will go into letters and read them to you. Other people who observed his character and did not approve. Stronghold, self-storage, mini warehouse, 6963 Kemper Road, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45249. Phone number 513-489-0644. September 5th, 1989. RE units C/43-A and C/49-A. To whom it may concern, in May 1989, Mr. William Bailey and Peggy Farmer Bailey came to Stronghold Self-Storage to permit Peggy to get from storage the items specified by the court. After several hours, they returned to the office to have our locks put on. At that time, Peggy said that Mr. Bailey would not let her have all of the items and the units would have to be locked. I told them that I would put my locks on and that neither party could get in without the other unless the court order was changed. Both parties agreed this was a good idea. In June, Mr. Bailey called to come over and get some property and was told that he could if he paid the rent up to date and came with Peggy or a new court order. On June 29th, 1989, Peggy called and said that there was a new court order which had been worked out during the final agreement. I told her that she and Mr. Bailey could have the property if the rent was paid. Instead of getting the property and paying the rent, he took us, Stronghold, to Small Claims Court to get his property without paying his rent. On August 9th, 1989, I went to court and Mr. Bailey was told that he was in the wrong court. Late in June, Mr. Bailey called and was very nasty and abusive, but was told if the rent was paid, they could take the property as per court order on August 27th, 1989. On August 27th, 1989, Mr. Bailey and Peggy came to get the property. Peggy came to the office and said she had gotten her property and that Mr. Bailey could put his own locks on the storage units. Mr. Bailey could have come with Peggy in June when the divorce was finalized and the rent would have been much less. I would like to add that Peggy was very cooperative and pleasant during this entire transaction. Since our contact was with Mr. Bailey, he was legally responsible for payment of rent on the 2 storage units. Yours truly, Howard T. Kalsbeck, manager. Anyone who wants to check? Here's his signature. Here's the letter. So, that attests to Bill's character. I have another one. To whom it may concern, I am writing out of concern for the physical and mental well-being of Miss Peggy Farmer and her daughter Bethany. I have known Peggy for 4.5 years now, and have found her to be honest, rational, perceptive, and responsible. I have not known of any time when she has been negligent with respect to caring for Bethany, or hurt her in any way. It is my understanding that Peggy and Bill are undergoing counseling at this time. Bill appears on the surface to be calm, well-kept gentleman. However, as I got to know Bill, I found this was not the case. I have had occasion to interact with Peggy and Bill alone together over the past 4.5 years. Peggy is a very strong person, but at times was unaware and therefore quite vulnerable to Bill and his subtle manipulation and mind games. Bill told me openly that he felt he needed to mold Peggy and Bethany. The last 3 years have been very stressful for Peggy, working to put herself through school, obtaining her master's, her jaw surgery, the high-risk pregnancy, and Bethany's birth, and foremost, the emotionally disturbing and traumatizing incidents with her husband, Bill. With these fluxes and stresses came the inevitable lack of confidence and insecurities about oneself and all others. The following are some of the incidents I am aware of and or have observed. 1. Bill verbally abusing Peggy when he first found out she was pregnant and accused her of trying to lose his unborn child. 2. When she was about 5.5 months along, Peggy came into the lab one day with black and blue bruises, and it took me a long time to get her to admit to me that those bruises had been directly caused by Bill pushing her down on the parking lot at her apartment. 3. When we brought Bethany home from the hospital, Bill yelled at Peggy incessantly while she was trying to reacclimate to being home. 4. During both the hospital stays for the birth and her jaw surgery, Bill didn't even respect Peggy's request for certain basic necessities, i.e., I am a bit embarrassed to write this, underpants and nursing bras. 5. At one point, Bill didn't even want Peggy to have her own friends unless he could approve of them first. 6. Bill has taken many of Bethany's things and refused to return them unless he gets something in exchange, i.e. teddy bears, storybooks, her first bathing suit, the pieces of her birthday train. 7. On one day last July, when Bill was supposed to have visitation with Bethany, he used the visitation time to steal the truck. When I contacted him because some of my things were in Peggy's truck, Bill denied going through the contents of the truck, but knew everything down to the smallest detail. Peggy, through counseling therapy, has established a stable base for herself and Bethany, and an environment in which she is beginning to grow emotionally and become more confident and aware of herself, and is learning to cope with the changes in her life. Sincerely, Geraldine Mary Stanson. And here is the letter. Another letter showing Bill's character. I was present in Miss Peggy Farmer's parents' home on September 16th, 1992 between 9 o'clock a.m. and 1:15 p.m. during Mr. Bailey's visitation. Also present were Miss Farmer, Bethany, Miss Lynn Taylor, who came with Bill. My impression of the visitation is as follows. 1. Bethany appeared to be hostile towards Bill. I have met with Bethany previously, and her interaction with people was usually friendly, warm, and playful. Her behavior was different when interacting with Bill. On several occasions she shouted at Bill. This was surprising since I have never seen her shouted to, or make demands from anyone. She even hit Bill once or twice during my presence. Bethany was more friendly towards Miss Taylor and instigated play with her. Bethany also played with me. 2. Bethany interacted with Miss Farmer more spontaneously. Bethany appeared to be more comfortable with Miss Farmer. She hugged and kissed Miss Farmer on 1 or 2 occasions. She put her arms around Miss Farmer and talked gently with Miss Farmer. Bethany also tried to involve Miss Farmer in her play. Example, she tried to build a tent with chairs and blankets while playing with Miss Taylor and got Miss Farmer to help her build and protect the tent. 3. Bill appeared to be aloof. For most of the time I was present, Bill was reading. He did stop reading several times to join in the plays with Bethany. There was a lack of spontaneity towards Bethany. Example, he never instigated any play with Bethany. He did not offer to make breakfast for Bethany, nor did he offer to take Bethany out for lunch. 4. Another odd thing was Bill's concern with time. It only occurred to me because our conversation over work, and he remarked how time flies when one was occupied. Yet, when Miss Taylor started to play with Bethany, he told Miss Taylor they have to leave for lunch in 12 minutes. Thereafter, he started a countdown and commented every couple of minutes as to when they were leaving for lunch. He and Miss Taylor promptly left at 12 o'clock p.m. and came back precisely at 1 o'clock p.m. Raymond Y.K. Pun, Ph.D. The above statements are sworn before me on September 15th, 1992. So, there's the signature for this person and the letter. Another letter. It goes on. Raymond J. Grill, Jr., 229 E. Rochelle, Apartment 1, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45219, 513-281-8529. The Honorable Judge Gaines, Court of Common Pleas, Division of Domestic Relations, Hamilton County, Ohio. To the Honorable Judge Gaines. This letter is in regards to case number A-8709486, file number E-152809-0-2. I have served as an observer during 2 separate incidents of visitation concerning the defendant William Bennett Bailey and the family of the plaintiff Peggy Farmer. I was called into court on several occasions to present my observations, and on one occasion was actually permitted to present my observations to the court. I was recently informed by the plaintiff that the court referee ruled against her, finding her in contempt concerning visitation. I am writing this letter to you because I was shown a copy of the referee's decision. In this document there is an instance where my testimony has been changed from what I originally reported. The referee reports that on October 11, 1992, during a scheduled visitation between William Bennett Bailey and Bethany Farmer, the daughter of the plaintiff, Bethany, cried because she had wanted to go with father. This is a mistake. My testimony given that day, as confirmed by both Miss Farmer and her lawyer, is that Bethany Farmer was indeed crying, but not because she wanted to go with her father, but rather because she was very upset with her father. Bethany verbally asked her father why he was trying to hurt both herself and her mother. This is what had her in tears. I do not know how my testimony could have been misinterpreted, but I believe that the mistake was critical in understanding what actually occurred on October 11, 1992. I feel that, due to the importance of the referee's decision, the mistake in the report of my testimony needs to be clarified. If I can be of any assistance, please contact me. Thank you very much for your time. Sincerely, Raymond J. Grill, Jr. Here is the letter. Another letter. Guido DeMarco, MSW, Concern R plus 8280 Montgomery Road, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45236, June 20th, 1995. Hamilton County Department of Children's Services, Central Parkway, Cincinnati, Ohio. Attention, Sharon Evans. Dear Sharon Evans, I am writing in regards to the possible removal of Bethany Farmer from the custody of her mother, Peggy Farmer. Over the past 2 years, I have had the opportunity to act as visitation supervisor. between Bethany and her father, William Bailey. During that period, I've been able to establish a trusting relationship with Bethany. On scheduled visitation days, I would spend time talking and playing with Bethany in order to establish trust and rapport with her. I observed Bethany and her mother Peggy and have found their relationship to be based on trust, love, and understanding for each other. I feel the removal of Bethany from this environment will have long-lasting effects on Bethany's mental health. I would like to mention that I am not a firm believer that a child belongs with the biological parent at any cost. The best interest of the child should always be top priority. I do feel the best interest of Bethany is to remain in the custody of her mother. Please do not make this another example of how the system victimizes the victim. If you have any questions or comments regarding the above, please feel free to contact me at 891-1691 or 741-1177. I will be available by phone after 3 o'clock p.m. this afternoon. Sincerely, Guido DeMarco. The same Guido DeMarco who stopped Bill from tossing me in a car when I was a child to force me to visit. He actually threatened that he would call the police if Bill did not put me down. Okay, another letter. Northland Counseling Services of Medina County, INC. Main Office, Human Services Center, 246 Northland Drive, Medina, Ohio, 44256, Medina, 725-9191. Okay, blah, 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 blah. June 20th, 1995. 2. Staffing Committee, Department of Human Services. From Michael Romanek, Ph.D., Clinical Psychologist. R.E. Bethany Farmer, date of birth, 3/12/87. Dear Committee members, it is my understanding that you are considering possible placement of Bethany in foster care. I would like to take this opportunity to forward my professional opinion regarding such possible action. I have provided individual therapy to Bethany for nearly 2 years while I was a faculty member of the University of Cincinnati. I am very familiar with the visitation dispute between her mother and father, the relationship between Bethany and Miss Farmer, and I've had the opportunity to observe the trauma that the years of litigation has had on Bethany. Miss Farmer and Bethany have a very close relationship. I have no questions nor reservations about Miss Farmer's adequacy as a parent. And, as I have testified in court previously, I don't believe that Bethany has been coerced or enticed by her mother to alienate her feelings towards her father. The stability and love and sense of security provided by Miss Farmer have been critical to Bethany's psychological well-being over the years of litigation and uncertainty about her safety. It is my professional opinion that removal of Bethany from her mother into foster care would have traumatic impact upon Bethany's emotional well-being. Bethany's hospitalization in Children's Hospital last month attests to her fragile psychological makeup, and separating her from the security of her mother would have possible devastating effects. Please let me know if further information is required. Sincerely, Michael Romanek, Ph.D., Clinical Psychologist. Here's his letter. This was my personal psychologist, not my mother's as the court tried to claim. He did not have sessions with my mother, only with me. And she was not feeding him information as a hired gun as they tried to claim. And she could not hear our sessions because the waiting room was so far away that she couldn't possibly have known what was being said in that room. Another letter from Rosie, my grandmother. On October 31st, 1987, Peggy came to the house with Bethany and asked if she could stay a while to get things worked out in her marriage. Bill then changed the locks on their apartment and refused to give Peg anything to set up housekeeping, so she and Bethany have been with us since that time. My concern in this matter is the safety and care of my granddaughter, Bethany Ann. As a mother of 5, I cannot understand many of Bill's actions, which certainly do not indicate a real committed love for Bethany. I would like to relate just a few of the major ones. 1. Bill did not help support Bethany for the first 6.5 months while Peg was in Columbus, even though he was then working and earning more than Peggy. 2. When they first separated, he insisted on having Bethany at his place every other night, which is certainly not good for a 9-month-old baby. This in spite of the fact that Peggy offered to go there until time for Bethany to go to bed. This ultimately led Peg to file for divorce so Bethany could have some stability. 3. What kind of father would leave his child stuck 25 miles away from home without transportation? There are no buses out here or a car seat. This happened when Bill took the truck at Children's Hospital. 4. What kind of father would have his baby ride in an unsafe car, then make a statement that it wasn't fair that he should have to use the old car? 5. His treatment of Bethany during the time he had visitation in the summer of 1988 borders on child abuse, or at least child neglect. Bethany came home with wringing wet clothes, matted hair, flushed face, soaking, wet diapers, and often drank 2 bottles of milk immediately. During that time, she would have a most strange and sad look when she came home. Bethany would fight when Peg tried to put her in the car seat, and one Saturday she screamed so loud in the garage that I thought she had been seriously hurt. When I went out, I discovered that she refused to get in the car seat, and Peg had to forego the trip to buy Bethany shoes. 6. When Bill came to get her on Saturday or holidays, she would run from him and several times hide behind my legs. Can you imagine how a grandmother feels at a time like that? 7. Bill has consistently hidden his employment so that his support payments would not be increased or taken out of his check. On the court appearance on June 21st, he asked to pay even less than the minimum. He has always been behind in these payments. Is this the action of a loving, devoted father? He always claims poverty, but much of this is his own actions. He told Peg he would take her to court so often he would drain her financially and she would lose her job. Stretching this divorce through lack of cooperation has been costly for both of them. 8. I do not think Bill is committed to the care of Bethany to the extent that he can give her a safe and good care. Peg made the statement to me to the effect that she worries that someday Bethany will come back seriously hurt, especially mentally. She said Bill would then just abandon Bethany and she would be left handicapped for life. That's a terrible burden for a mother to carry in her mind. 9. When Bill agreed to visit the baby here, the court did not order this. My husband, Peg, and I discussed it with the hope that Bill and Bethany could have a better relationship and Bethany would feel better towards him. I believe that is now the case. Being here, he has to pay attention to her needs. He admitted in court that things had changed for the better. What greater testimony could there be that this arrangement is working? This was when the court was considering putting the visitation elsewhere, which they ultimately did. My mother's letter. I filed for divorce in 1987. The papers were filed in December 1987. Bill's response to this was to lock me out of the apartment and not let me have Bethany's or my things. He told me he would take me to court until he broke me physically, mentally, emotionally, and financially. He was allowed to visit any time he desired. He generally just arrived without forewarning. He also generally came after Bethany was asleep. I told him he had to let us know when he was coming. His response was to take me to court, asking the court to award him permanent custody. 1. In court, we made an agreement as to the date and time when I could get Bethany and my things. He then called me 2 hours before this set time and told me that he couldn't come. I reminded him that he was the one who chose the date and the time, so let's just do it. When I arrived, he had the police there. He would let me have nothing and opened cabinets, etc., for the police officer and I to see inside. He refused to allow me to take even Bethany's things. We were also told in court to make visitation schedules that could be used to try to work towards standard visitation by the time she was 2 years old. I submitted mine and he never submitted one. I then started visitation according to my schedule and said we would use that until he came up with a proposal. Rather than talk about a schedule, his response was again to take me to court. This time his complaint was that I wrongfully denied him visitation and refused him overnight visitation. 2. Bill still submitted no schedule to the court but was granted Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.